Back in 2022, I made this video ranking all the worlds in Donkey Kong 64. Each one offers a unique design and character, with some flaws here and there, so let's spend some time with each one individually. It's time to deep dive into an absolute classic world, and a personal favorite of mine, the one and only Creepy Castle. Rare truly nailed the design with this one. This level brings a similar hype to Halloween. I mean, I'm not personally one of those people that go nuts for Halloween, but I certainly understand that feeling when it's time to play Creepy Castle. The music eases you into spooky vibes. Even more new villains are introduced, while also bringing back some of the most challenging common villains. The interior of the castle contains memorable landmarks and challenges. Below the castle holds these foggy and eerie dungeons, with some areas invaded by pools of toxic waste. This tree is creepy, but there's so much to love about this world. It's like if Luigi's Mansion and the spooky levels in Frogger 2 had a baby. It's spooky, fun, and well-designed, but let's take it one step at a time. The Creepy Castle lobby does an excellent job of setting the tone. That toxic sludge pool is right there in the center, and there's kind of no harm in testing the water and diving right in. This being one of the first times players will encounter this, there aren't any drawbacks to getting knocked out in the lobby area, but players will remember to avoid it going forward. It's cool seeing Koshas just walking about in the lobby. They're a tough enemy. It's a great way to prep the players for the world they're about to enter. And I just have to point out the music. Each lobby is an adaptation of the DK Isle theme. And honestly, they're all great, but something about Creepy Castle's lobby really sticks out to me the most. I have a whole video praising Grant Kirkhope's work in this game, but I just wanted to point this out real quick. So off we are to the final world before Hideout Helm, and I love how immediate the world shuts the player out. This tiny little plank to cross over. I don't even see this as a slap to the face to the players. I think it's just a hilarious detail. Like, it's a pain in the butt, sure, and there's no way around it, but it feels accurate to the theme. Can't make it too easy now, we got spooks to see. Right away, players will notice this eerie tree, but can only be entered once completing DK's Barrel Blast. Finally, the last of these challenges. The interior of this tree is neat, but sadly no golden bananas can be achieved right away. Both Donkey Kong and Chunky require the new scope upgrade from Funky Kong. Annoying, yes, but at least the tree is easy to return to and gives the players a reason to go hunting for Funky. But speaking of upgrades, let's look into the last wave of them in this game. It's cool that Rare found more ways to make Funky valuable. While the scope can be a double-edged sword because it creates lag, I'll admit the idea is cool. The way that some of these door switches rotate away from the player if they step too close, it's very fitting to the world. Cranky Kong gives everyone one last potion for an upgraded Simian Slam. Same as last time, kind of a pointless upgrade, but I appreciate the new ground pound animations and the red shockwave. And then there's Candy Kong. Something about Creepy Castle that I absolutely adore is the layout. At this point in the reviews, you should know, I think the ideal world has a flexible layout and helps guide the player from one area to the other, instead of just a mess of rooms all connected to each other. It's difficult navigating a world like Crystal Caves or Frantic Factory because the layout is all over the place and not concise. It's easy to get lost. Creepy Castle guides the players up the castle, feeding them most of Donkey Kong's yellow bananas. Once players reach the top of the castle, warp pads should be entirely activated, and a large portion of the world's bananas have been collected, which is necessary for a boss fight requiring 400 bananas. Landmarks become easier to note as players pass by the several Kong switches to reach the inside of the castle, as well as the handful of unusual landmarks like the greenhouse, mushroom, drawbridge, and tree, and a few dungeon doors. I honestly can't say I've been lost while navigating the world. So let's look through this world from the bottom and work our way to the top of the castle. These giant dungeon doors are located on ground level and kind of difficult to find. Maybe not necessarily difficult, but it's not an immediate presentation off the entrance. Just tucked away a little. Inside contains several paths, one that takes you to Funky Kong, as mentioned. The other paths are golden banana opportunities for each of the Kongs. Tiny and Lanky both have bananas waiting for them in this tomb, which is surrounded by that threatening green toxic pool. Lanky's is pretty straightforward, the biggest challenge is beating the clock. Tiny's can be detrimental if you aren't careful. It's all about timing. DK, Diddy, and Chunky all have gold bananas waiting for them in this skull entrance. Diddy and Chunky have similar challenges of clearing out the enemies waiting in coffins. DK, however, has a much bigger challenge, the minecart challenge against the resident demon. This may possibly be the best of the cart challenges. It's a tough one, and I remember struggling with it as a kid, but it still lives up after all these years. More on this in another video. Off of the drawbridge is a more spooky dungeon. This one displays more challenges with the green sludge and scope. Oh, and Candy Kong. There's not much that can be said about this dungeon. Tiny has a simple bonus stage barrel. Diddy's challenge is a basic swing from chain to chain event. Lanky's balloon challenge can be tricky, again with the devastating sludge. But if you time it out right, it's possible to skip past some of the paths and save a couple seconds. I think this dungeon being immediate access from the entrance and displaying these new tricky door switches is a way to tell the players, alright, one last hurrah. You see this? Go find Funky. You'll need another upgrade. So as we climb up the castle, there are a handful of golden banana opportunities on the outside. Tiny, Chunky, and Lanky all have little challenges off of this section. Tiny's challenge is nothing we haven't done before at this point. Shrink down, enter the smelling can, and defeat all the enemies. This challenge is a little more unique with the homing ammo, as well as the new enemies, flies. It's kind of interesting how they didn't just go with bats, as it's kind of expected for the world. Yeah, but the stinky food calls for it. It's neat we're seeing the fly for the first time outside of the bonus stages, or so I believe. Chunky's challenge in this shed is pretty much exactly the same. Take out all the baddies with the homing ammo. Except this time the enemies are bats. Yeah, there you go. Lanky's challenge in the greenhouse can be a little tricky. It's a simple maze, requiring the orangutan ability to reach the banana before time runs out. I have some frustration with this one. The camera doesn't provide a ton of perspective, and I really hate how it rotates with the player. I think for a maze, the camera should be fixed, making it easier to remember where you've been and where to go next. Wasting a few seconds just to reach the ability barrel will always be a terrible design to me. And blowing through coconut crystals is really frustrating. This isn't even near one of the hardest bananas to collect, but I'm not a fan of this kind of setup. Thankfully, as I said, it's not that hard to collect this one. And last, Diddy has a hidden bonus barrel located all the way at the top of this castle. At this point, I think players should be conditioned to always look for ways to fly Diddy to the very top of any world. There's bound to be something waiting. And it's a blast having a world like Creepy Castle to fly around in. The whole world is available to you. No rooms section off from another, just one big open area to explore. And rightfully so, with dozens of red bananas and coins to collect, all scattered in the air. So it's time to start exploring the inside of the castle. This is where it really starts to give off Luigi's Mansion vibes. Each room is conveniently labeled and a Kong assigned to open each door. And each of these rooms provide fun challenges with unique design. Donkey Kong's room really sticks out to me. Love how the door switch isn't even properly lined up to the library. We were all expecting the door up front to open, only to scatter at the last second and find that library entrance. It's very appropriate to the theme. We're introduced to the new ghost enemy, both on the inside and outside of the castle. I've always loved this variation of critters. Nothing complex, just a basic sheet over its head to fit the spooky vibes. And I suppose that's what I've always wanted for Crystal Caves, just something fresh and fitting to the theme. But continuing on to the library challenge with DK, we're introduced to even more new enemies. The books. They hold a strong resemblance to a Banjo-Kazooie baddie, no doubt. But I love seeing yet another unique scenario for DK's invincibility barrel. One could probably get through this hall of haunted books without the ability, but you might be missing out on some of those goodies in the center. Moving on to Chunky Kong and the museum. This one is pretty straightforward. While passing through the hallway, players will notice there are tiny warp pads behind glass. Unexpected, but nothing we can do for now. We'll put a pin in that. But into the museum itself, and I gotta say, it's kind of a letdown. There's a few framed pictures and statues, sure, but I had higher expectations. Like, how cool would it have been to see a knight statue down the halls or a ridiculous amount of spiderwebs? Anyways, the golden banana is straightforward. Primate punch the brass switches, place the boulder on the switch, and voila. It seems like it's been a while since Chunky needed to lift a basic boulder. Moving on to Diddy Kong and the Ballroom, an absolute classic room to the castle. The hallway embarks a strong first impression. The creepy laughter in the soundtrack, the blue flames, the koshia monitoring the hallway. I love the Ballroom. And the room itself is humongous. I've always wished we could witness some ghosts hosting a party. We've seen this challenge before, light all the flames on the candles to reveal the bonus stage barrel. And one of my favorites too, Minecart Mayhem. So on to Tiny Kong, surprise surprise, also starting in the Ballroom. Players will notice the tiny warp pad when adventuring through the Ballroom with Diddy. Now, players can bring Tiny into the Ballroom and warp into the museum for her golden banana. I've made another video further discussing this mini kart race because there's so much to love about it, but just wanted to add, it's great to have a fun rematch. Saving the worst for last, Lanky Kong has his challenge at the very top of the castle. I don't mind the first part of this, shoot the grape switch and balloon up to the bonus stage barrel. It's quirky and silly and pretty on point for Lanky. But man, this world has us going through not one, but two Be There Bother challenges. What a ripoff. The other one being in that creepy tree for Chunky Kong. I'll always appreciate the build-up to both barrels, but they really had to punish us with two of these? This is the harder version of the bonus stage, too. I just don't have it in me anymore. Look, I've done it all on 2 occasions. That's good enough for me. So while I might not love every single aspect of Creepy Castle, it's still one of my favorites of the whole game. I think it's a classic, and definitely deserving of the hype it's received. But what do you think about this spooky world? When you were a kid, did it kind of creep you out as well? What are your favorite aspects of the world? Also, what aspects of this world do you dislike? I know not everyone shares the same amount of love that I have for Creepy Castle, so I'd love to hear in the comments what you love and what you don't love. Until then, see you next time.